I want to thank my colleagues, Senator Sanders, Senator Murphy, and Senator Lee, for this bipartisan effort. Why are we here today? Why are we discussing wars so far away? We're here because of this book. This is the Constitution of the United States. The Constitution very expressly tells us what we're supposed to be doing here. In Article 1, Section 8, it lays out the things that we are responsible for, the men and women who serve in Congress. And among the things that Congress shall have the power to do is to, quote, declare war. Declare war. Why did the Founding Fathers make certain that it was clear that Congress would be involved in that decision on the declaration of war? Because when they created Congress, the idea was that the people of this country, far and wide, would at least have a voice in the decision through the people they elected. And we would be held accountable for our decisions to declare war or not declare it, because we're up for election. So Congress has this responsibility, and over the years, Congress has not exercised this responsibility in a responsible way many times. I've got a question. I'll bet you if I brought in every United States senator and asked them the following question, very few would be able to answer it. How many countries is the United States military currently involved in fighting? How many countries are we in today fighting? Would you guess 2? Iraq, Afghanistan, all right, for sure there. 5, 10, 20. Brown University's Cost of War Project recently published data saying that the U.S. fought terror through direct fighting, training, or military support to other forces, or through drone strikes in 76 countries between October 2015 and 2017. Is that the right number today? I'm not sure. None of us know. We're often surprised to learn we are sending our military and fighting in another country. And when something awful occurs, Americans are killed, for example, sometimes members of Congress hear for the first time, oh, we're in what country fighting? I take this pretty seriously, and I have over the years, when it comes to the authorization of using force, because it isn't just a matter of projecting American power, it is life and death. These are decisions that will be made by Congress or by the President, sometimes both, and the net result of it, even under the best of circumstances, is that Americans will perish. Funerals will be held in Illinois, in Utah, in Vermont, and in Connecticut, and in Wisconsin. That's the reality of the decisions that we reach. I can remember the debate right after 9/11 on the floor. It was one of the most important of my career. And it was a question about whether or not we would authorize the President of the United States, President Bush at the time, to use military force to respond to 9/11. If you remember the debate, there were 2 real options on the floor. One was to use military force against those responsible for the attack on the United States and to send that force into Afghanistan. The other was to go after the so-called weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. 2 parallel debates, but 2 debates that I saw very differently. I was skeptical from the start about this Iraqi invasion. Nobody ever connected the dots between Saddam Hussein and 9/11. We were talking about the threat that he was to the rest of the world. And yet we voted here on the floor of the United States Senate in 2002 to authorize the use of military force to go into Iraq. Sadly, we're still there today. Sadly, Iraq is in shambles, politically and physically, and the war continues. I voted no. I remember that night because it was in October in 2002, and I remember that night because the vote was taken very late, and there were 2 or 3 of us who stayed on the floor here, Kent Conrad, as well as Paul Wellstone of Minnesota. Paul Wellstone was up for re-election. We wondered if that vote would affect him in any way, and I remember going up to him and saying, Paul, I hope that vote, your vote against the war in Iraq, doesn't cost you the election. And Wellstone said to me, it's all right if it does. People know where I stand. They expect nothing less. He didn't live to see the election. If you'll remember, he died in a plane crash with his wife and staffers just a few days after that vote. But that's the gravity of this decision. That's the importance of this decision, and that's why I want to thank my colleagues for bringing us together, just a few of us, but enough of us maybe, in the Senate to remind people of our constitutional responsibility. The vote on Afghanistan was when I voted for the invasion of Afghanistan. The message was clear: you attack the United States, we'll come right back after you, al-Qaeda, and we did. I recently asked the Secretary of Defense, when I voted that way in 2002, I did not imagine that 15 or 16 years later, that war would continue. How does this war ever end in Afghanistan? He didn't know the answer, didn't come up with one. All he could say to me was, if we left, it would be worse. Well, you can say that a lot about other countries in the world, but what we're talking about today is what we are going to do in terms of this horrid situation in Yemen. I was in my office looking down on this debate through C-SPAN, and I saw the photos that have been displayed here, the utter human and physical devastation that has taken place. Mr. President, Senator Sanders is asking a simple but deeply important question here today. Senator Lee and Senator Murphy join him. Here is the question: who authorized the United States military action to help Saudi Arabia fight the Houthis in Yemen? I didn't. I don't remember that there was ever a vote. So how are we doing this? By what authority is our government doing this? This is not about the merits of the fight in any way, or a vindication of the Houthis' troubling role in the horrific Yemeni civil war. It's about whether Congress follows its constitutional responsibilities. It's whether the American people have a voice in this decision, the same people who will send their sons and daughters to bravely serve in our military. So I'm happy to be a co-sponsor of this resolution that halts any such U.S. support without congressional authorization. I call on this Congress to deal with revisiting the 2001-2002 authorizations of force that I believe have been stretched by multiple administrations beyond any credible limit. There are real threats to the safety and security of America out there, al-Qaeda and its successors, and others. But we in Congress have the responsibility to authorize those conflicts and regularly update them as necessary. Congress and the Senate have been absent without leave when it comes to Article 1, Section 8, and our authority and responsibility to declare war. We have other looming threats, North Korea, Iran, but any U.S. war against those countries or others, short of protecting against an imminent attack as allowed under the War Powers Resolution, requires the vote of Congress, regardless of who the president may be. Mr. President, when it comes to the declaration of war, we simply cannot see this as an annoyance. We must do our part. We must follow the Constitution, even when it's difficult. I yield the floor.